Welcome to another edition of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. I am your host, Louis Sung. With me is my co-host, Chad Ronenbaum. And with me from the deep end, Miami, is Max Himmelreck. Matthew Kanata and Kathy D'Amato will be joining me shortly. But we have a very special guest with us tonight, joining us for the first segment of the show. Former Dolphins tight end, former Chargers tight end, and I believe he had a brief stint with the St. Louis Rams. We have Randy McMichael. Randy, we want to thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, it's my pleasure, guys. Anytime.
Yep, so there's Kathy. Hello, Kathy. Kathy's mute today. Okay, so we're going to be talking. We got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. We got some stuff going on with the Miami Dolphins coaching staff, obviously. That was the big storyline. Joe Philbin is out of Miami, and many Miami Dolphins fans rejoice. I personally feel sorry for the guy because I like him as a person. I've met him I've met him a bunch of times. He's a real nice guy. But in all honesty, I don't think he was cutting it as a head coach, so I feel sorry for him as a person. I don't feel sorry for him as a football analyst of any kind. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to talk briefly about the Jets game, what exactly went wrong, and that's also got something to do with the coaching, so we'll discuss that. But we're gonna get right into it. Needless to say, the game against the New York Jets, it was just about as bad as it could get. Like, from start to finish, the Miami Dolphins looked like they were dead in the water to begin with. It looked like there was no fire whatsoever. There was no real desire to play. It almost looked like we had sent a bunch of zombies out there to go and play football, and that's just not going to cut it in the NFL at any level. And it looked like, in all honesty, that these Dolphins could have been beaten by college teams, and that's incredible to say because you have guys like Brent Grimes and Ndamukong Suh and Cameron Wake who are still out there playing, but it looks like they're doing absolutely nothing. Obviously, that's not the case, but there are other factors that go into it. But as a collective whole, the team itself has not functioned. And we all thought that with all the talent that's on this football team, on paper, we should be a playoff team, no doubt. We have stuff. We have weapons coming out of our ears for Ryan Tannehill. We have an improved Ryan Tannehill who has not been playing like an improved Ryan Tannehill for several reasons. We have a defense that features some of the best in the business. And yet we have a whole bunch of nothing. It's been awful. So it finally came to a head in London. Stephen Ross talked with Joe Philbin. Joe Philbin said the conversation went well. I don't know what well means in Joe Philbin's book since obviously he was fired the next day. But I'm honestly not surprised that this happened. I am surprised that it happened so early, but I am not surprised that it happened, and I don't think anybody else should be either. Joe Philbin is a very nice man. I got called out a lot on Twitter for saying that he looked like he didn't care. I guess it's not fair to say that he did not care, but what he showed was that it was just another day job to him. Every question he answered sounded the same. Every expression he had looked the same. He never showed any kind of. It almost looked like he wasn't aware of what was going on. It seemed that every time he was on the field or he was shown on the field, he was either looking at something on the field with his arms crossed or his mouth was hanging open like he was trying to figure out what was happening. And I don't say that to be mean. I mean, that is literally what it looked like. It looked like he had no idea what was going on. So Philbin is fired, and in comes Dan Campbell, who is essentially the anti-Philbin embodied. He is un-Philbin personified. So this is something that I talked about with Randy over Twitter very briefly yesterday, and he basically said that leadership is an incredibly important aspect to what a head coach needs to have. And so far, Dan Campbell is showing that he's showing signs, at least, that he can be that kind of a leader. He can be what this Dolphins team is missing. So with that said, Randy, I want you to elaborate a little bit on what exactly it was you meant, because there have been a lot of people who are saying that leadership is important, yes, but it's not something that is the most important. You can get by not being a leader of men. So I want you to talk a little bit about what it takes to actually be a head coach, and what can you get away with not having.
What I meant by that was not everybody leads in different ways. Like, you have different coaches who are like Pete Carroll. You have guys that are like North Turner. You have guys that don't say anything. I mean, it's just what it is. You have different coaches who have different styles. But what I mean by leader of men is when things go wrong, do your players believe in you? And it seemed to me that the players didn't believe in his message anymore. It was getting stale. The team looked ill-prepared to play. Now, all that is not on the coach himself, because the simple fact is that you got to play ball. And I hate when people say, well, you're a professional. I mean, well, it's the coach's fault. No, it's not all on Coach Philbin. These players have got to go play themselves. You know, and the one thing that made me so mad about it is that you can just sit there. And I woke up early, sat out all night, Saturday night at the Georgia, up in Athens, watching my Georgia Bulldogs get stomped. Woke up early in the morning and watched my Dolphins play. And to watch them play the way they played, it was uninspiring, to say the least. So, go ahead. But what?
So, do you feel like how much of this do you pin on the Miami Dolphins players themselves? Because I understand what you're saying is that they really shouldn't need to be inspired, but at the same time, we always look at coaches who can find a way to inspire their players, such as a Jim Harbaugh, and say that they're the best in the business.
You know what's so crazy about it is I live here in Atlanta, and I'll never forget when the Falcons went down and played the Dolphins in that preseason game and how the Dolphins just dominated, and then going on radio that next day and listening how everybody was like, you know what, the Dolphins might be the team to beat this year in the AFC East. We all bought that Kool-Aid, but then we realized they don't have a lot of talent up front, especially on the offensive line. They are just – Ryan Tannehill's running for his life. Brandon Albert, I mean, I don't know what made him think that he can't go through training camp, can't go through a week of practice, and then all of a sudden I'm going to show up on Sunday and play. Now you see the ill effects of that with the hamstring and all those things. But the thing about Coach Philbin is everybody always says he's a nice man and all those things, and I can't do nothing but agree with that. But at the same time, when you look at the results, you can't. It doesn't matter how nice of a man you are. This is a result business, and he has not been getting those results. And the team is taking a step back with all the talent they have. They should be a playoff team, but for some reason he is not getting to that level. And like they say, the buck stops with the head coach. No matter what, no matter how bad the players are playing, it always starts with the head coach. So that's the biggest reason why he probably got fired, because they just seem like the message was getting old, the message was getting stale, and for some reason I still don't understand how he became the head coach. But, you know, and I don't want to throw salt on it, but he just never seemed like from the first day he got there that he was head coach material, in my opinion.
No, and the other thing is when that staff was built, we look at it now and we say there's just no play calling expertise, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, you have Bill Lazor, who was a quarterback's coach. You have Philbin, who didn't call plays in Green Bay.
And that's what I think about it is like, he was the quarterback coach of probably the best quarterback in football.
Right. How hard do you really?
How hard do you really have to coach this guy?
How much do you think Tom Brady's quarterback coach does every week? I mean, not that much. He's got a pretty good job.
That's what threw me off.
Right. And then when you look back, Bill Lazor is the same thing, and it's really funny. You can draw a parallel right now between the problems that the Eagles are having and the problems that the Dolphins are having. Both were expected to have good offenses and have fallen flat because of the inability to get it done up front. And it's really surprising. You're exactly right. I mean, Brandon Albert, there was no way he could jump in, and people say, oh, Jason Fox is bad. Brandon Albert is almost as bad as Jason Fox when he was playing.
I mean, that's what I say. It just seems like they have no cohesion, offensive line. And
right.
I'm gonna tell you a guy who is getting off easy is Mike Tannenbaum. Okay, this guy, I don't know. All of a sudden, his claim to fame is he drafted Darrelle Revis, and he was a part of the two AFC Championship teams two teams that went to the AFC Championship teams with the Jets. That's his claim to fame. Okay, this guy has not done anything to make this Dolphin team better. You go spend $60 million, and I love my Dolphins, but the Dolphins were more than just a defensive tackle away from competing for championships. And then you go out there and you try to make this big splash, and I'm sure it's not all on him. I know that Mr. Ross has something to do with it, but this is dysfunctional right now, and it's to a point where, you know what, just clean house. I think you should clean house, start over from the beginning, start with a new GM, new coach. But with that being said, if they play well, his job will be safe, and if they find a way to sneak in this thing and make it interesting, Coach Campbell Dan might have a spot here in this, on this team.
Mm-hmm. It seems like when they're making the decisions, they just go in with no plan. I mean, it seems like every single decision is just made on the fly with no big overarching plan that's going to take them through multiple seasons to rebuild. It seems like what's happening is an issue will come up, and they don't have an established way in the organization that they fix it, and it just falls on the next person. And that just ended up being Philbin one too many times, and he didn't do enough, like you were saying, to maximize the talent that he has. And I think that'll be very important with whether it's Coach Campbell or the next coach, maximizing the talent, because no one doubts there's talent on this team. I mean, you have someone who's on the edge of being an elite safety in Rashad Jones, if not already. And you have Sue, who didn't just get to Miami and become a bad player. Ndamukong Suh is still Ndamukong Suh. And then Tannehill, it's going to be if the head coaching position becomes available, this is going to be a really attractive landing spot for the first time in a long time.
You know what? The talent is here.
Right.
If you're a head coach and a coordinator, you maximize their talent and you put them in positions to be successful. Sue has not been in position to be successful. He's not a two-gapping defensive tackle. He is a penetrating defensive tackle. That's what he does. That's why he got the $60 million. That's why he's considered the best defensive tackle in football, because of what he did. And you're not utilizing that. Now, with that being said, the players around him aren't playing well either. Okay, let's just call it what it is. Cam Wake is not playing well. I know he's banged up and everything, but he's not playing well. Vernon on the other side, he's not playing well. That dumb penalty he got in the Jacksonville game, I don't want to say it cost him the game, but
it kind of did.
I mean, come on, man. You got to be smarter than that. These guys are not playing around. He's getting double teamed. When these tackles get double teamed, that means a linebacker is free to float to the ball. There's no playmakers right now in their front seven other than Sue right now. And like you said, Rashad, I love Rashad. And Rashad is playing his butt off every night. But he can't do it alone. You got Brent Grimes. He's banged up now. The other corner, I don't know who the heck this guy is. I mean, how many passes he's going to give up? It's just so dysfunctional right now. And nothing seems to be hitting on any cylinders. And it's a shame because the expectations going into this year for this team were so great.
If I can go slightly off topic for a minute, Randy, you mentioned Cam Wake, and I think this is something interesting that a lot of people bring up, but it's never really expounded upon, and I thought, you would have some experience with this. So what I'm hearing is that apparently Cam Wake gained weight this offseason, I guess in an attempt to become more powerful in the run game. However,
for what?
That's what I was about to say. How much of an impact does adding that kind of muscle to your frame
That's not him.
do to your game?
That's not his. Not his. It's so crazy, if he did, I'm not sure. I haven't heard much about that, but that's crazy if he did add weight for the run game.
It's what's so crazy. He was successful like the way he was at, so why change it?
Right.
Well, I'm not sure that it was up to him. There's a lot. Do you remember, Randy? I believe it was Rex Ryan who told Tim Tebow, "You need to gain like 20 pounds and become more of a fullback type of player."
Then he don't know what
he slowed down.
I'll never question Rex's football IQ or anything, but if what you did and what you weighed at made you the dynamic player that you were, why change? Cam Wake is a pass rushing demon. Why put on weight to stop the run? He does an adequate job enough of doing that. All right, you gave him all that money to rush the passer. So why change that? That's why I say everything is so. The defensive coordinator Coyle, he's old school now. He's not going to change that defense. And I'm hearing, he is still the defensive coordinator as of now. But it's like, you know what? Do what your players do best. And I hate when coaches. And my high school coach told me this a long time ago. Football is easy. Coaches make it hard. All right, you do what your players do best to be successful, and that's how you'll be successful.
Unfortunately, Randy, I don't think that's been the case. I mean, that's why Philbin's losing his job is on both sides of the ball. And a lot of teams just in the NFL, it's so focused on schemes anymore, and coaches want to run their system and their scheme, and they're always trying to get players that fit their scheme. They're trying to adjust players, and Miami was going to extremes. I mean, Cole Messi, he's basically a defensive end, strong side linebacker. Last year they had him trying to play middle linebacker.
And why is that?
I mean, it doesn't
why
make
is that? It isn't. This guy, he is not. I mean, he's a very good football player, and I don't want to take anything away from him. But it's been obvious for a year and a half now, a season and a half. He's not a Mike linebacker.
No, and so they're just on a whim doing that, and so now they bring Bryce McCain in to be who's a slot nickel corner, and they immediately move him out to the boundary where he gets torched, and you're wondering again. This guy hasn't been a boundary corner his whole career. Why all of a sudden are they moving him out there?
And same thing on the other end. You have Jamar Taylor, who's an outside corner, who they move inside. Jamar Taylor has the tools outside corner. Jamar Taylor he was at Boise State. That's what he was drafted to do, and that's where he plays best. And for some reason, they just decided to say, oh, well, two players fit these specific roles. Let's flip-flop them. And you saw what the Jets did on the first play of the game.
You know what's so? Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I guess my biggest frustration with the coaching staff is, you have to show confidence in your players, and time again, this coaching staff literally bails on what I would call their own players. And Jamar Taylor is a perfect example. He was a second-round pick. He's been on the team a couple years, and when push came to shove, they brought in a guy from a different team and gave him that job. They gave it to Bryce McCain. They do this over. I mean, again, I'd mentioned this last week when they brought Jonas Gray in and they were playing him in the Buffalo game. I was saying, this guy's been on the roster, a week and a half, and he's already being played ahead of Damian Williams. I'm not saying that Jonas Gray is not a good back, but again, where's the confidence in the guys that you're trying to develop? You literally brought a guy in off the street and immediately elevated him ahead of the guy that's been here 2 years working in your system. And the disconnect and what are the general managers and coaches talking, I'm still trying to figure out why they drafted Jordan Phillips in the second round after they signed Ndamukong Suh, and then in that Buffalo game he's inactive. And I'm trying to figure out what are you doing with your personnel moves when you're not even playing the guys. So I think the confidence level of not just the play calling, but the confidence level in their own guys that they were developing has just been lacking. And you can see that over and over. They tend to want to bring players in that other teams developed. Greg Jennings is another example.
Oh, my God. I love Greg, but come on, man. I'm with you. They got too many good young receivers for them to be playing behind him.
Well, and that's my point would be, why did you draft Devontae Parker if your intent was to bring Greg Jennings in and play him all the time?
They're two heads that aren't talking to each other. There's three. There's the coaching head, there's whatever the hell Tannenbaum is, and then there's Dennis Hickey, who does the draft. And so you don't know what personnel moves are going on, so Dennis Hickey just drafts the best players available, ends up with Jordan Phillips in the second round, and then what's going on? And then they signed C.J. Mosley too, which I get it was a depth signing, but why are these players getting playing time over Jordan Phillips? I mean, there was just no communication within the organization about what was going to happen and what their big plan was for who would start and who would play this season.
Yeah, that's my point. Where's the confidence level of the people you're acquiring that you? I mean, they continuously bring in these free agents, and I'm not ripping on Greg Jennings. My thought is, do you really think at this point in Greg Jennings' career he's going to add a lot to the offense? Where Devontae Parker is extremely dynamic, and Miami desperately needs to be able to stretch the field the way the defenses are playing against them, and they just leave him on the bench. And I know he's a sore subject, and he hasn't been making good life choices, but Deion Jordan was another example where they moved up in the draft to get this guy, brought him into the team, and they had no idea what to do with him. They didn't even have a position for him to play.
Do y'all? Could anybody please tell me why they drafted him so high?
Well, usually when you do something like that, it's like, oh, this is what we need. This is what we're bringing him in to do. He showed up at camp, and they didn't even know whether he was going to be a DN or an outside linebacker. They already had Olivier Vernon playing in front of him. And so they essentially moved up to the 3rd overall pick to be a special teams player and a situational player.
It's crazy. And Randy, if I could ask you really quick, have you ever seen within the league an organization that has this type of disjointed front office between Don Aponte and Mike Tannenbaum and Dennis Hickey? Have you ever seen a situation like this?
That's why you can't win. Most teams that are successful, who are always contending for titles, it starts from the top and it works up all the way down to the bottom, and everybody's on the same page. And that's what when I look at Miami, I'm looking at like Texas. Texas has too many hands in the cookie jar. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has this. Everybody's a decision maker, and that's where it seems like it's at with Miami right now. It's like who's calling the shots really? You know,
well, Stephen Ross is never there. So
I mean, he's that rich owner who's like, you know what? Okay, is that what you want me to do? Okay, that's the type of owner he is. Like, he's not like a Jerry Jones or a Robert Kraft that's always hands-on with it. He's more like, I trust these people. I'm going to sign a check, and y'all go do what you do.
And that's the problem. Randy, let me ask you. Let's just continue this. We're talking about the coaches here, and Chad was bringing about how they lose confidence in their own players. Was there ever an instance, and I'm almost sure that there was, because pretty much every team has this, was there ever an instance where you felt while you were on the field or wherever that there's somebody on this team, a young player, that should be out there instead of whoever so-and-so better? Because it seems to me that there's a lot of talented players on this team, like Vigil, Jamar Taylor, and all those guys, especially here in Miami, that just seem to be getting passed over for the sake of supposedly consistent veteran play.
Oh, definitely. I've always seen you see it every year. You see a young guy who should play. I mean, I was in this situation before. I was like, we got this young tight end. He should be playing in front of me probably. He can't block and do the things that I could do. But by then I was slowing down. I was like, this guy should be on the field more. And I went and I told them guys, like, Coach, this guy needs to be on the field more. Sometimes you got to swallow your pride. And sometimes loyalty gets you fired, man. Loyalty will get you losses. And the one thing I look at New England, they're not loyal. I mean, other than the Tom Brady, I mean, it ain't no loyalty around it. They will get rid of you right when you think that, I might have one more year. They might say, no, this is it for you. And the thing about the Miami Dolphins is right now, and I said this, I think maybe a month or so ago, they don't have anybody that scares you on their offense right now. I mean, this kid, Landry, I love watching him play because he is all heart. I mean, this guy plays hard the whole game, and I love watching him play. But I don't see the progression in Ryan Tannehill this year. Maybe it's the offensive line woes, but he just seems like he has not progressed. They're not running the football. I mean, Ryan Tannehill is a quarterback that needs that threat of the run. I mean, that's what he needs. He needs a run game. The tight end, you go out and you get this guy with $7 million per year. You're not using him. I mean, there's so many playmakers that are not getting the ball, but it starts up front because they're not protecting him. This guard play, it is terrible. It ranks up there with Philadelphia right now. It's just being just terrible inside. I mean, Mike Pouncey. I'm sorry, not Mike, but give me his name. Pouncey.
Dallas Thomas.
What's the guy?
Douglas and Dallas Thomas.
Yeah, Dallas. They just not getting it done, man. It is so obvious, and everybody sees it. They're not getting it done, and they're not getting it done on the tackle with Fox and with James. It's just not getting done, man. And it's to a point where it's like you gave this guy $100 and something million to be your franchise quarterback. Well, don't you think you need to protect that investment? And they're not protecting it.
Well, again, it comes back to confidence, and I'm hoping Dan Campbell can instill that, because even if you're Pro Bowl level, it's the NFL. Everybody is extremely talented, and Miami they completely lack commitment to the running game. And it's not that they can't run the football. Miami's average per carry is like 4.3 yards. It's just they literally don't do it. If they run
get out that daggone shotgun, man.
Well, and they do it so blindly to the system. I mean, this year it's been unbelievable. They had the ball inside the 2 against Buffalo and threw 4 straight passes. And they were in the goal line situation again against the Jets and threw all passes. I mean, after they got a penalty, they still threw all passes.
And they threw the same route. I mean, it was like the same route for like 3 plays. I mean, they had just given up.
I know, and you look at the line, and I kind of feel sorry to an extent to the offensive line because they are very maligned, but it's hard to succeed when the defense knows you're going to pass the ball. You know, try to block NFL caliber defensive ends when they don't care at all about the running game. They're just doing every move they can think of to get to the quarterback. You never get that balance in the respect for the running game. So here's one thing to think about, guys. With Dan Campbell, for one, he's a tight end by trade as a player, so he knows the position well. And I suspect Deion Sims will probably be back by the time they play again. Miami has very talented personnel to run a 2 tight end formation, and they can get away from that shotgun 3 wide receiver set all game long, and they can run double tight, and they can pound the football a little bit if you use Jameel Douglas, use Mike Pouncey, even use Billy Turner. Those guys are all capable run blockers. They just don't ever get the opportunity to run block. They're pass blocking the whole game. So it's going to be interesting to see if Dan Campbell changes that philosophy of we are going to throw the ball out of the shotgun 75% of the game and tries to balance that out a little bit, because you add the extra tight end, you let Deion Sims play a lot more, that helps you with pass blocking Ryan Tannehill too. You have an extra guy in there that's a capable blocker. And I don't know, I guess I feel like if they mix it up a little bit and they go back to a little more fundamental football and formations and run formations that make sense to the down to go for yards, you might be surprised at how good the team actually is from a talent standpoint when they change the scheme up a little bit.
I'm gonna tell you right now, they're gonna run the ball. I don't care. Like I said, this guy, he's a tough guy. I love his press conference. I thought that he was selling it. I think he went there and did some curls before he went out there in front of the camera because he came out looking real yoked, and he was talking that WWE wrestling talk. But the one thing he's gonna do, he's gonna bring toughness. He's not afraid of these guys, and these guys, you know why these guys respect him? Because he's been through that grind that they've been through. And even if you don't win a lot of these games left, they got 12 games left. Even if they don't win the majority of them, they're going to be more intense because he is going to make them intense because he is going to demand it. It's different from professional and college. You can't bench a player. It's hard to say, well, I'm giving you $60 million. You're not playing well, so I'm gonna put this guy. You can't do that. I mean, that's the business. That's when the business part of it comes in. But he is going to get these guys playing hard. And that's why I said earlier, I would love to be at that practice either tomorrow or Thursday, because one of these days it's going to be a training camp. Hey, let's strap it up, ones versus ones, and let's just see, and let's just man up. I mean, I honestly see that coming. And the next week when they go up to Tennessee, it's going to be a different football team, I promise you, especially from the start. But it's about can they sustain it for 4 quarters.
Okay, so would you say that players tend to play harder for coaches who inspire them?
I hate that. I love the question, but I hate how it sounds because right. You're a professional. You're supposed to go play no matter what because that's your job. You're getting paid to do that. But like what you just said, he's gonna give them that fire that they need. He's gonna like that what's the word I'm looking for? Okay, I'll just leave it with the fire. He's gonna like that up under them because the simple fact is that when you look over to the sideline, you're not gonna see a coach walking around with his head down, or when something goes bad, the offensive defense runs off the field and nobody says anything. No. When something bad or good, or when something bad happens, Dan's going to go get in that guy's face and let him know, you know what, you need to pick it up. And the other guys are going to feel that vibe, and that's what it's all about. Even though you're a professional, if you don't agree with the coaching and all that stuff, you're still getting paid to go do a job.
It's interesting. There was a quote from Vince Lombardi, I believe. So he said that coaches who can do X's and O's on a blackboard are a dime a dozen, but the ones who win are the ones who can get in their players' ears and motivate.
100% true.
So
100% true, because the thing about it is coaches, the coach's job is to put their players in positions to be successful. That no matter what, and that's even if you have to scale back, make things more simple. Because I promise you, when a player's not thinking as much, they play faster. And right now, it seems to me, especially on defense, they're thinking too much. And all these adjustments and all this stuff, just go play, line up, play football, and I promise you, the results will be better. You got a $60 million beast right there. Let him do what he does best. All right, don't be trying to sit there and say, well, you know what, you came here, this is the technique we want you to play. No, this is what got you $60 million. You play what you play, and you know what? Because I promise you, if they let him do what he does best, everybody around him will succeed because he is that good of a football player.
And that's what I was always believing, is that Ndamukong Suh would come in and make the whole team better. But it looks like that Suh is playing something that he shouldn't be playing. This is the problem with the Joe Philbin regime, in my opinion. The whole problem with the regime has always been he tries to fit the square peg into his own little round hole. And when you do that, you wind up making players not be their full successful. Will Davis was traded to Baltimore, and within 2 weeks, he's already playing better than somebody who's been in Baltimore for 3 years. That just speaks volumes to me. It doesn't seem like it's a coincidence that players leave Miami and suddenly turn into ballers. It's because they've been using these players wrong this whole time.
Well, but the thing about it is that's the GM's responsibility. That's the scout's responsibility to find players that fit your system. But the thing about it, and I was thinking about this last night. When is the last time you've seen a big money free agent come in and make the team better? The only one I thought of recently was Darrelle Revis. Other than that, how many times have guys went out in the free agent market and just, because Miami, they did it with Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace is going to come in and be this deep threat. He's going to take our offense to the next level. Didn't happen. Ndamukong Suh. We got this. If you're going to spend the money on these guys, you have to let them do what they do best. You cannot make it like, okay, this is what we play here. You fit into us. No. If you're giving him all that money, then you know what? You build around what he does best. It's just simple as that, because you can't, because when you are trying to build a team through free agency, you got so many different skill sets. So many different guys do this better. Some guy does this better. And when you're trying to mesh it together, it just doesn't work, because not everybody can play in the same system. Some people are just systematic players, and 90% of players in the NFL are systematic players.
So let me ask you this then: how much do you blame scouts for, like, let's use this example, Jelani Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
We know he's the best linebacker on the team right now, like, by far. However, we would have never known that if Dannell Ellerbe hadn't gotten hurt, and they literally had to force Jenkins to play there because there was no other options.
Well,
Is that on the coaching?
Well, the thing about Ellerbe is that Ellerbe was an outside linebacker. That's why he was successful in Baltimore.
Well, that's where they put him in that second year.
Exactly, but the thing about he didn't fit that kind of system. He was a 3-4 wheel linebacker. Okay, a 3-4 wheel linebacker. Now you're trying to put him as a 4-3 wheel linebacker. Even though it sounds like it's not a big difference, it's a big difference. And I love him to death, but he's not a good space player. He's not as good as they thought he was in space. It's a big difference. But then you bring him in his first year, you give him this money, and you put him in the middle of a 4-3 defense. That is not what he does. He made all his plays being a 3-4 wheel. So why not go get a player who can play a 4-3 wheel or a 4-3 Mike? That's why I say that comes down to scouting. That comes down to the front office of knowing how to get players to fit your scheme. And that's where teams mess up so much. They think, okay, I can get this guy, I can plug him right here, and he'll be successful. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, they haven't, and it's been years. That's how depressing that is. I would say Carlos Dansby was the last real Mike 4-3 linebacker they've had, and since then
why they get rid of Dansby? For what?
Money. And Philbin, of course.
But not even money, because they got rid of Dansby and then they went out and signed Philip Wheeler and Dannell Ellerbe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
we had Kevin Burnett too. We had Kevin Burnett.
Was that an upgrade? I don't understand. I never understood that. I love Ellerbe and I love Phil, but I'm like, okay, you got KB and you got Dansby, and they're holding it down in the middle. They're holding it down.
We weren't allowed. We had that stretch of 20 games or whatever where we didn't allow a 100-yard rusher. And now look at us. We can't stop the run to save our lives.
It's amazing. But like I said, that's when you get too smart. You think you know too much, and you think that you're getting the edge up on these guys. You know what? We got this guy over here at Baltimore. They just won a Super Bowl. He caught a couple of interceptions. He picked off Tom Brady. Let's bring him down here and throw him in my system. We can make it work, even though he doesn't fit. That's what they were thinking.
And that's when it becomes a problem. Randy, we've had you on. We kept you away from your family a while, but I do want to. I want to let you go soon. But I want to do one more question, and this is actually something that is very interesting to me because every week it seems that I have to go off on this tangent about how much blame gets thrown on the quarterback and how much credit is given to the quarterback. A friend of mine says that we live in this magical QB world where it doesn't matter. The trenches don't matter. The running back doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. All that matters is quarterback versus quarterback. And that is exactly the mindset that brought up this whole idea of the Dolphins can go 6-0 because quarterback versus quarterback. I want you to tell me when you were a player, did that magical QB world exist, and how much did it bother teams and locker rooms when they saw that either their teammate was getting all the credit and they weren't, or they were getting all the blame when they didn't deserve it?
Well, when you play football, you already know what the most important position is. It's the quarterback position. And if you are a team player, it really shouldn't matter who gets the credit. You know, and a lot of the quarterbacks in today's game, they don't even accept the credit. They're always like, my offensive line blocked well, or my receivers ran great routes, the backs ran well. But a great quarterback is when you lose, you'll say, I have to play better. I got to get the ball out of my hands quicker. Not the O-line needs to block better, or the running back needs to hit the hole, the receivers need to catch the ball. And that's what makes a leader of men as far as a quarterback position. Is like, you know what? When it's good, you deflect all that. And when it's bad, you accept all that. And if you ever notice, all the great quarterbacks in the game today, they do that. You know what I'm saying? They don't ever you don't ever throw your teammate under the bus. You always accept, because the thing about it is, you know that you are, for majority, maybe 28 out of 32 teams, the quarterback is the face of the franchise. So he is going, first of all, he's going to get all the money. It is what it is. He's going to get paid. All right, he's going to get all the credit, and he's going to get all the blame. But at the same time, you need that guy, because the one thing that he does is that he deflects away a lot of the negativity that is thrown at the offensive line. Because, you know, as bad as the linemen on Miami's team has played, I've not heard Ryan talk about them playing bad. He's always saying, it's on me. I have to do a better job. I have to do this. I have to do that. And as long as he can keep doing that, he's going to be a good football player. But right now, he is just not where he needs to be going into this year. And I think a lot of people put the contract with his performance, but it's just the fact that he's not degraded. He's just not playing well. I'll just say that, because I don't want to say, well, he is digressing as a pocket passer and all that stuff, the same old thing. He can't hit the deep ball. He's just not playing well, and that's a tribute to him not being protected. I mean, how many times did you see this Russell screen come off the slot? Was it 3 straight times to end the first half? And I'm like, Brian, turn the protection that way. Make a sight adjustment. Do something. And that's where he has to get better at.
Well, the story is, Randy, that he doesn't have that permission.
Well, that's the thing about it is, you got to give your quarterback some kind of responsibility. You can't just say, okay, here it is, run it. I mean, that's what was happening in Denver the first 2 games with Peyton. And I'm like, you got Peyton Manning. You don't tell him run the play. You know what? You give him the option to change, and that's what I'm saying. When you got to put, if you're going to give this man this kind of money, franchise quarterback money, you have to trust him. All right, because that didn't make any sense. That was so high school Harry that this same guy, the same blitz, the same coverage are coming off the slot, and you need to tell me you can't give your quarterback permission to say, hey, turn to 41, or give him a snap, hey, break off your route. Nothing. You just hanging your quarterback and your offensive line out to dry. That makes absolute no sense to me.
Do you think Dan Campbell will fix that whole mess?
I think Dan's going to change a lot of things. I don't think Ryan's going to be in the shotgun as much. I think they're going to run the ball a lot more. I think that, you know what, he's going to go to Bill. He's going to say, first of all, he's going to get both coordinators to simplify things. I think that'll be his first thing. Just simplify. Let these players go play. And then once they start playing, then you put other things in. I think, and I'm sure, and all of us on this line right now, we got caught up in that preseason hype, how good they look, how good Ryan Tannehill was throwing the ball and things like that. All right. But now it's time to just scale back, simplify, do the things that you do best. And I think the one thing they have to start doing, you got to run the ball. Let your lineman run off and hit somebody instead of pass protecting and getting hit. Let them run the ball a little bit. Let them get that sweat going. Let them get that dirt going in their mouth and like, you know what, let's go. And then all of a sudden, that's when you take the shots. And make sure you get this kid Matthews in the game more. I mean, on that interception that Ryan threw at the end of the game, oh my God, he beat the brakes off of the corner outside on the inside post route. But he was so focused on Landry that he threw it up. Well, I mean, Matthews just killed the corner on the outside on inside post. So you can't get locked in just because Landry's playing so well. They were like trying to throw all these screens. They were trying to basically let Landry beat the whole team by himself, and he can't do it. Spread the ball around.
And that's basically what we've been preaching on our website this whole time, is that people want to, they're so quick to say that Ryan Tannehill's the problem, Ryan Tannehill can't do it, he's not a franchise quarterback, and the reasons are he's not Russell Wilson style. And mind you, I've never said that Ryan Tannehill is better than Russell Wilson, but people have made out Russell Wilson to be this savior of all quarterbacks, like he's one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, it seems to be they're ignoring the fact that he has one of the best defenses in football on his side, along with a running back who drags 3 men along with him before getting 5 extra yards. So I'm looking at this. I've always said that football teams are like a puzzle. You have to put the pieces together if you want to take a Super Bowl run. Russell Wilson did not lead the Seahawks to the Super Bowl. The Seahawks led the Seahawks.
But hold on, let me catch you. But they wouldn't have got there without him.
They wouldn't have gotten there without. They wouldn't have gotten there without him.
I don't think Russell is an elite quarterback, but I think Russell is an elite fit for that offense. That's what I think.
Right. And I'm not saying they would have made it without him, but by the same token, Russell Wilson doesn't get to the Super Bowl without that Legion of Boom. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely. I definitely agree with you. It goes hand in hand because he got some bad boys on that side. But this guy made plays, man. And he made plays that most quarterbacks can't make. You saw that last night, how many sacks he avoided, things like that. You look up at New England. I've never seen a quarterback that can will a team like this guy up in New England. He wills this team to win. It's like, as long as you have this guy, we don't have anything to worry about. But for all these years, they couldn't get there. What did they go do? They went out and got Browner. They went out and got Revis. And then they end up winning the Super Bowl. This defense, they have the pieces. I don't know how long Grimey's going to be out. Hopefully it's not too long. Hopefully after the bye we can go back. But the other corner slot is just lacking. And I'm going to tell you, the big loss was Ludell. God, I hate to see him go down again in the preseason after he worked so hard to come back from that ACL. He would have been him and Rashad back there as safeties would have been great. But the Dolphins have got to get some playmakers on defense. And I'm talking about playmakers in the front seven, mainly at the linebacker position. Because right now it's just like they just look like guys. They
are just guys.
It's like nobody's making an impact play. We got a linebacker up here called Paul Warlow. Paul Warlow leads the team in tackles every year with 100 tackles, but all his tackles are 7 yards down the field. That's not impactful.
That's not it.
That's not impactful. And hopefully, like I said, I know Dan. He's gonna come in. He's gonna wanna, hit the ground running, all those things. But he got to get Cam Wake some rest. He got to let him heal up because his leg. You can tell his explosion out there. He's a vet. He knows how to work. Give him the week off. Let him rest. You know what I'm saying? But these other guys, hey man, put them in the Oklahoma drill and let's go because the toughness is lacking right now, and it's obvious because they're getting pushed around the field, and they are a spectacular play by Jarvis Landry away from being 0-4.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And like I said, Randy, you said that about the whole Russell Wilson thing. I understand. I totally get it, and I am definitely not denying it. But what I've always wanted people to understand is that yes, the quarterback is the most important position on the field, but if you don't have a team around him, you're not going to get anywhere. Just ask Dan Marino.
Oh my God, I was just about to say that. Hey, you can throw it all over the yard all you want to, but if you don't have those key components, because what you got to have, first of all, you got to protect your quarterback. I mean, if your quarterback, like I said, Ryan was running for his life, and it seemed like he's been doing it all season so far. They have not run the ball. They have not. It seems like they're so predictable. Okay, we're in third and short, or we're in third and long. Where's Jarvis getting the ball? Find a way to get him the ball. Throw a little middle screen to him. Let's get him the ball. Let him see if he can shake 4 or 5 people and get the first down. That seems to be the Dolphins' offense right now. And you got playmakers outside. This kid Parker, I don't know if he doesn't know the system, if he's still, he's not fully healed from his foot surgery. But you drafted this kid number 11 overall. Put him in the game. All right,
You can send him out and give him the route to run.
Let's just see what he can.
He doesn't even have to know. If you have him one-on-one, just throw a jump ball to that kid. I mean,
Right, on 3rd and 15, we should not be throwing wide receiver screens on 3rd and 15.
But let's just see what the kid can do, man.
Right, exactly.
Put this kid Matthews out there. This should be the top 3 should be Matthews at the X, Matthews at the Z, Parker at the X, and you keep Jarvis inside. That's what it should be. Let's just go with these guys. Let's see what these young guys got and let them play ball. Because I love Greg a lot. I think he's a great football player. But the thing about it is, he's taking reps away from these young guys getting better in game action. Let them go out there and do their thing. And I think Dan sees that, and I think he's going to incorporate. You're going to see a lot more of Parker on the field and Matthews with Jarvis and whoever's that tight end.
Jordan Cameron.
I like Jordan a lot, but Deion, he is.
Deion Sims,
you can tell when he's not on the field because he does that dirty work that Cameron can't, man. It's obvious. You watch the tape. It's like you're asking this tight end to do something that he really can't do. So,
Honestly, I think that's the key for the Dolphins to save their season. I think Deion Sims and Jordan Cameron on the field together give them a completely different offensive formation, and they're both very capable tight ends. I mean, you guys remember what kind of damage New England did before Aaron Hernandez was spending his days in jail when they had those dual tight ends. Miami has a very good dual tight end set if they want to use it, and I think Dan Campbell will because, I mean, what is Dan Campbell?
He's a tight end. I still remember when that whole fiasco with Dave Wanstead, and instead of giving Mark Trestman the offensive coordinator job, he gave it to my tight end coach. I was happy because I had 73 that year. I was like, okay. But the thing about, like I said, it's going to start up front, and the thing about what baffled me about what Dan said at the press conference was he's been around. He was there before Coach Philbin got there, and he saw what was going on, and he was taking notes. And then he sat there, and I don't want to say he threw him under the bus, but he's like, this culture hasn't changed. So I'm like, what are you saying? Like, was it a soft culture? Are you going to make it harder? I mean, it's going to be interesting. That's all I can say.
He was very careful about what he said.
Yeah, you saw he was picking his word because I could tell what he wanted to say, but we're playing soft and all this stuff. But, Coach Philbin was a good man. I admired him for not saying what he wanted to say.
Yeah. All right, Randy. We're gonna let you go, man. We've kept you here long enough, and
all right,
you gotta get back to your family, man. Always family first, man. Always.
Oh, no doubt, man. Especially now, because they all looking at me too.
Yeah, we're sorry.
Oh, you don't gotta.
We got into the football stuff.
You don't gotta apologize. They know what Daddy does, but it's all good, man. I appreciate you guys as always. Anytime you need me, let me know. Gentlemen and Miss Lady, y'all have a good evening. All right, I'll get at y'all later.
All right. Thanks, Randy. Really appreciate it.
All right.
So that was Randy McMichael, guys, former Miami Dolphins tight end, a really awesome player. He was dual threat. He could block, he could catch, he could run, he could do pretty much anything you asked him. I think the only thing they didn't ask him to do was throw the football. And he had a lot of interesting things to say, guys. In fact, I think that was the most blunt I've ever heard a player talking on an interview like this. So, I mean, what's your reaction, guys? He's had a lot of stuff to say.
He's right. I mean, everything that we heard him say, we have to really look into and really delve into because he has so much experience, and it's very unique to have a former player who's looking this closely at one team and one issue and to really get his perspective. And what he said just makes total sense. The thing that I take away most from it is it's a hybrid. It's not just players playing for the coach or coaches getting the players to succeed. It's a healthy medium, and Miami wasn't achieving either.
As far as I'm concerned, pretty much everything that Randy said, I pretty much had to agree with wholeheartedly. And even the stuff he said about Russell Wilson, like I can't disagree with him. Russell Wilson was a big deal with the whole Seahawks making the Super Bowl. However, he also acknowledged and agreed with the point that I was always making, is that without the Legion of Boom, Russell Wilson doesn't get anywhere. It's a team effort, guys. Team effort. And I understand that people love Russell Wilson, but my gosh, you can't just keep putting it on the quarterback. You can't. And I know there are a lot of Russell Wilson fans out there listening to this show. And again, I'm not saying that Ryan Tannehill is even better than Russell Wilson. I'm saying Russell Wilson is better than Ryan Tannehill. But you cannot make a fair comparison, in my opinion, unless you put these guys with the same kind of circumstances. If you give Ryan Tannehill the Legion of Boom, if you give him Marshawn Lynch, how well do you think he does? Personally, I think he does a lot better. And you see what he can do when he has time in the pocket. There's a reason he's been getting knocked around so much. He has the least amount of time in the pocket of any quarterback in the entire NFL. And whether you want to make the distinction of how fast he gets hurried or how fast he actually gets hit, it doesn't matter. He has more pressure coming at him than any quarterback in the entire league. That has a lot to do with it. And you can't deny it, no matter which kind of distinction you want to use. It does make a difference, and no matter what quarterback you are, even Tom Brady, if you pressure this guy, things are going to start going wrong. And I don't understand why people can't understand it.
Speaking of the Patriots, I mean, you talk about quarterbacks who the situation affects. Matt Castle made the Pro Bowl in 2010.
Correct, man. Matt Castle was the one who took over for the Patriots in 2008, correct? And they won. They made it to the. They still won games. I don't remember if they made the playoffs on a wild card or something like that. But it's not like they were pushovers without Brady.
Right, exactly. And Matt Castle is the guy. And you look, and that's exactly what you're saying. You have two quarterbacks who can both win games in that system. Who's telling what Ryan Tannehill could do in the Seahawks system? I mean, it's two totally different players. It's impossible to compare them. And so people, like you're saying, people want to see one quarterback produce the same as another quarterback regardless of system. And it's Russell Wilson does well because he doesn't have to throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns every game.
And throw the ball 50 times.
Right. If the Dolphins want to win, Ryan Tannehill has to throw for God knows how many yards and touchdowns because there's no running game. The Seahawks, their money zone is when Russell Wilson throws for 200 to 300 yards for 2 touchdowns, and Marshawn Lynch has 110 yards on the ground.
And that's all I'm saying, man. Balance. You want your team to win, balance. And
I guess that question, though, I know Miami doesn't. I would say they do have a running game. They don't run the ball because they've never even attempted to run the ball all year. To me, running the ball is not running misdirection plays out of the shotgun.
That's true.
Which is all they do. They have never even attempted to line up and power run the football all year long. They stay away from it. So I think if Campbell does that, I mean that's a huge difference. And one thing to look for, I think you're going to see him do as well is use Ryan Tannehill's skill set a little bit more, because he has come a long ways to be a pocket passer, but he's very dangerous outside the pocket. He's a fast quarterback, and I was saying that last week. If some of the things I would suggest to try to for the team, let him run the ball 6 to 7 times a game. Literally have those designed where he just takes off out of the pocket, maybe does one read, and if that read's not there, he's instructed just take off and run. And that puts so much more pressure on the defense because they've got to always be aware that Ryan Tannehill is going to be taking off and running multiple times a game. And so I'm hoping to see him do it. Now, I know they don't want to get him hurt, but he's
going to get hurt anyway.
Yeah, and there's a point where you're like, all right, do you want to protect your quarterback and be 1-3, or do you want to use his talent and try to win football games? And so I think you're going to see some of that. I think you're going to drastically see a reduction in the 3 wide receiver set. And I hope Randy McMichael is right. I hope we're going to see a lot more Devontae Parker, because he changes defenses dramatically. And I personally think anytime they're giving him a one-on-one coverage, I don't care if it is Darrelle Revis on him, I am taking several shots. You don't have to throw it way down the field. Just get the ball up in the air when he's got one-on-one and just see what he can do. I mean, they drafted him for that talent. And, if you can force teams to start having to respect Devontae Parker over the top, it opens up things so much more for him. And if Ryan Tannehill can actually drop back in the pocket and have time because they've been pounding the football, it'll make things dramatically better for them. And, I mean, honestly, it's been so bad, guys. I wondered if, are they just not with it, or what's going on? Because, you look at their stats, and they run the ball about 75% of the time, pass the ball about 75% of the time. But it's not just that stat; it's the after run stat. It's ridiculously worse. Like, they hardly ever. It's like 90-10 where they'll run it a second time. So no matter what happens on the run, they rip off a 5 or 6 yard run, they go back to do 2 passes. They go 2nd and 3, 3rd and 3, or passing downs, and it's just defensive have picked up on that, and so it's just crazy to think about the unbalance they've had in offense right now. So bringing that back down to realistic play calling will help a lot, because they've just been doing things that do not make sense at all. And so I'm hoping that they can get back to just fundamental football. I mean, any team in the NFL, I bet you, can typically score when they have 1st and goal inside the 2 just by pounding the football over and over and over until they get in 2 or 3 plays. So I really, it's going to be interesting to see what Dan Campbell can do, because this is not a team. A lot of people have been comparing them to the 1-15 Dolphins. This is not a team that is devoid of talent. This is a team that has a lot of talent. And so if they can start approaching games differently and running different play sets and maybe doing things that make just a little bit more sense fundamentally, this team is not out of it. That's where I'm sticking.
And this is the thing, though. We watched the press conference, and we saw what I saw from that press conference. I watched pretty much the whole thing, or at least as much as I was allowed to, since the feed seemed to cut out early or whatever. But you saw. I told Randy. We told Randy this during the show. We literally saw the anti-Philbin. We saw a man who wants to make sure that this team is tough. He wants to make sure that this team is a football team. I made fun of the Dolphins all week long about how they're going to go up to London and ask their opponents, would you like a spot of tea? And that seems to be exactly what happened. They literally went up there and did absolutely nothing. It looked like they didn't want to be there. It looked like they wanted tea time.
The last 2 games are the worst I've ever seen, those, and not in like the score and the performance. Is that I saw both teams. I strongly feel the Jets backed off in that game. I mean, and when it got down into the late 4th quarter, it felt like to me like the Jets were thinking we want to try to get nobody hurt. And the Buffalo, I saw the same thing. I was even saying after the game, talk about fans that hate each other, the Dolphins and Bills fans. I wasn't even getting heckled by Bills fans. It's almost like it was.
No, the Bills fans felt sorry for me.
Yeah, it was boring for them. I mean, nobody wants to see complete blowouts. It's people want games that go down to the wire, and I felt the same way with the Jets. It was like, here are the 2 biggest rivals, on our schedule, and by the end of the game, it was like that team was just like, all right, we're just going to ease up on these guys. It's that bad. It's really that bad. So I'm hoping that he can fix that. If anything Campbell can fix is he can change their attitude, but it has to be 2-pronged. It can't just be him giving rah-rah speeches in the locker room. It has to be exactly what Randy McMichael touched on, is the coaches' jobs are to put people in positions to make plays. And I'm hoping they get away from blindly running this system over and over and over, running these same plays over and over and over, with the philosophy is if you guys just execute these plays better, they'll work. I can drop any play on paper and tell you if you execute it correctly, it'll work. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kathy.
So do you guys still feel safe with Laser as our offensive coordinator? Because I don't, honestly.
Okay, well, the reports are is that Laser was supposedly being handcuffed by Philbin's queasiness. So if this is the case, because Laser comes from a background of running the football, so if you really think about it, it doesn't make sense for him to be so willing to abandon the run so quickly. I'm wondering if this is literally Joe Philbin going back to his Green Bay roots and forgetting that, hello, you don't have Aaron Rodgers anymore, you have Ryan Tannehill. You can't do that.
Nobody knows, so to be honest, Kat. I personally, I am less concerned about Laser than I am Coyle, because
I
it's
still
just the
think Coyle gets
reports.
fired. He's just looking around. Campbell's looking around for a replacement.
He's
Yeah,
calling.
I
He's
agree.
making,
I did
he's
hear
making
that
calls.
they reached out to Schwartz and he said no. So I mean, I think they are trying to get him replaced. But I understand if they change the formations up, that I think Laser can do okay with play calling. We'll see if it's him that's calling these, like, I don't know, a good word, asinine plays where they're on the goal line and they're just continuing to throw fade routes versus just pound it in there. Or when they get 3rd and 1, it's like they've never heard of just the quarterback sneak play where you just push forward for the yard. But assuming they get, I feel like Campbell's going to force that mentality in there that they're going to do those things. But Dan Campbell has been a tight end, and he's been an offensive guy as an assistant all through the league. And so I don't have any confidence that Dan Campbell knows how to run defense. And so
None.
he's going
No.
to have to rely on another coach to run that defense. And right now that would be Coyle. And Coyle's scheme is obviously failing, and I personally feel like there's more talent on the defensive side of the ball than on the offensive side, and he is just not using it correctly whatsoever. He just will not go away from his scheme that is soft coverage on the boundaries by the corners, and then they have to come up and cover. And it's just been failing. Teams have figured out our cornerbacks are small. If you get it to the receivers out in space in front of them, they can break a tackle. And they found out that, if it's not Brent Grimes, just throw the ball up. I mean, how many times is that? That Jacksonville game, it wasn't like Bryce McCain has been beaten like badly down the field. They're just realizing that just throw it up on him and let their guys make plays. And so we need somebody that can take the ball away from them in those circumstances. And I think you'll probably see Jamar Taylor take over, where like he should have out on the boundary. He's a much better tackler. And he's been a little grabby at times, but he hasn't played that much. You gotta work with him and get him out there. So I'm hoping they can, but Coyle is going to have to go, because I don't see him changing the scheme up, and I don't see Dan Campbell having the expertise to force him to change that scheme up and tell him how he would do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's Campbell. Interestingly enough, I did some research on him, figured out while he is the youngest option, Campbell's seen so much. I mean, he's been a member of so many teams. I think he has to have an idea of what he wants to happen with the defense more than just handing it over to Coyle. I don't think he's just going to say that Coyle can manage it. I think he's looking for something, because he has connections throughout the league. I mean, he's part of the Parcells. He's in with the Parcells coaching tree somewhere in there. So he might be making calls to find a defensive coordinator who wants to come in. And I don't think that he's going to leave it up to Kevin Coyle, because I think, personally, when he was talking about the culture change that Miami needed, I think he was talking to Bill Lazor and Kevin Coyle just as much as he was Joe Philbin. I think he wanted to send a message that it's not just going to stay the same with them either. It's not that the culture change is going to happen just because Joe Philbin's gone and Dan Campbell's the new interim head coach. It has to be on both sides of the ball with everyone on the team agreeing. And Campbell's seen all. I mean, he was on the 0-16 team with the Lions, and the next season was on the Super Bowl champion team with the Saints. It shows you, he is recently in his career just seen so much. And he can relate to these players, and he can understand the current state of the league. And he can figure out a way to get someone in who can manage this defense. It just definitely, as Chad was just saying, it's definitely not Kevin Coyle. We know that. Kevin Coyle should have been fired last offseason, but we knew one of Joe Philbin's problems this whole time was that he's too loyal to his coordinators. See Mike Sherman.
Which, ironically, Randy actually touched on.
Right, exactly. And, I mean, it's going to be tough for him. But I think they picked the guy with the most upside because he's not someone you'd expect. But out of everyone on the staff, now that they've picked him, I think he's the best choice.
Okay, well, actually, guys, I'm gonna read you some stuff that's actually been going on while we were talking to Randy. Apparently, Boomer Esiason, and I know Jets, you can't dismiss him yet because Jets. I know. It's probably going through your mind. Who cares what he says because he's a Jets fan and he's a Jet. Yeah, okay. Inside, this is from Hal Habib of the Palm Beach Post. He's tweeting this. Inside the NFL's Boomer Esiason on the Dolphins change. Quote, conventional wisdom tells you that this does not work and it won't work. Esiason on Steve Ross, quote, you cannot allow players to walk into your office and circumvent the coach that is coaching those players. So essentially what Boomer is saying is that by removing Philbin, we are letting the players run the asylum and by putting in Dan Campbell. And you know what, guys? It's funny to me. We had this awesome press conference. We got so hyped up. We're bringing in the anti-Philbin. He's going to bring in toughness and intensity that we've been begging for all this time. And it took almost less than 3 hours for the fan base to remember something like, oh, yeah, we're the Dolphins. It doesn't matter what we do. It's just going to fail. And Twitter has been incredibly depressing over the past few days. And that's after they had this 5-second cheer that Philbin is gone. So I don't understand. Was like Philbin getting fired like some sort of happy drug and then it wore off and we just can't get any more of it? It baffles me to no end. We got what we wanted, and yet we're still upset.
I've got to say, Boomer Esiason, there are players who are analysts and there are players who are broadcasters.
Okay, well, we're skipping Boomer for just a second. Why is the Dolphins fan base on Twitter? You see it. You see it, Max. These guys are not impressed anymore.
Because what? Because it's like it's almost like a joke right now. It's like we weren't wrong to think the Dolphins will be better this season, but it's every year and we think something's going to happen. And we overlook these gaps, and it just feels like it just blows up in our face every time. So I feel like it's just Dolphins fans, especially the ones on Twitter. I mean, I know you and I are with a similar group of people on there, and it's a place where you have to step away from sometimes because it thrives on negativity. And you need to take a step back because if you don't, and I got caught up with this, you just feel like the team is a joke because the whole thing is a joke. You don't realize that, wow, these guys that run the team are smart. And while the people on Twitter can all sit there and analyze it, they know what they're doing. It's just sometimes it doesn't necessarily work out. And the Dolphins, unfortunately, haven't had any of it work out. And
Which lends itself to the theory that they don't know what they're doing.
Right, well, exactly. It lends itself to that theory, but we have to remember, I mean, they have these jobs for a reason, some of them more so than others.
Because Ross doesn't know what he's doing, which is another criticism that they can't get away from.
I don't know enough about Mike Tannenbaum, and I've said that. I need to see what he is doing, but I have a lot of faith in Dennis Hickey. I thought Dennis Hickey, I mean, I believed in Dennis Hickey coming in.
Dennis Hickey right now is a glorified scout. He's not doing anything.
That's the problem. And I think, and Ross has too much loyalty to his friends in Mike Tannenbaum, who's a friend of his, well documented. And it's unfortunate because, like you were saying, back to the Twitter thing, it's like just this team just gets picked apart on there, and rightfully so. But Dan Campbell could be a positive thing for this team, and fans just don't want to get themselves caught up in it.
But that's the thing, man, because I understand. I can get behind the whole, okay, he talks the talk and let's see if he can walk the walk. I can understand a wait and see attitude. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not saying Dan Campbell's a savior. Heck no, I want to see what he can do first. And I'm not saying, but this is the thing. It's like, it seems like I've always been accused of being this person who goes from one extreme to the other. I've never had a happy medium. It feels like now that I am the only person on Twitter and the whole Dolphins fan base in general that is the happy medium.
No, I agree. I agree with you. I put it in my article yesterday. I said, we need to look at who Dan Campbell is, what he has done, how he got here, and then say, let's see what happens. We can't just jump in and say, oh, he's a savior, or oh, he's the worst. I mean, he hasn't had a practice yet. And like you were saying, people on Twitter want to get so reactive. And it's this new social media age of sports analysis where everyone just wants to pick up their phone and tweet something when something goes wrong. And it's that same instant analysis that leads to the quarterback on quarterback comparisons. It's all a microcosm of this Twitter issue, which is everyone analyzes sports instantly. People don't take time to wait and see or to think or to figure it all out. It's just, what can I type right now and throw it out there.
Kathy, what's your reaction been? Have your mentions been blowing up about Dan Campbell?
Not my mentions, but I have seen a lot of diversity on my timeline. It's either people are, 100% sold on him, or they're like, you guys are fools for falling for him. And I'm with you. I'm in the middle. I'm like, he inspired me. I love the press conference, but I need to see what he can do
You
with
loved
the
his
team.
muscles.
Well, yeah. Can't lie
Let's
about
be
that.
honest, didn't we all?
My
I
coach
think-
can
I
beat
don't-
up your
Yeah.
coach.
I think Stephen Ross literally asked Dan Campbell, can you physically remove Joe Philbin from the building? And then when he got back and told Ross it was done, that's when they told him he was going to be head coach.
That's fun to visualize, actually.
Yeah, no, actually, can you imagine it? Like in the same way when we saw like the Hard Knocks thing, but instead of like someone walking up to Philbin's office, it's Dan Campbell walking Philbin out. But it's like you were saying, I do have to follow that up with saying Philbin seemed like a really good person, and just hope he lands on his feet and still is able
You know what? I'm tired of saying that. I know it's true, but it's like why do we always feel the need to mention that part? Okay, I'm over it. It's done. He's gonna land on his feet somewhere, but like it's not like this man will never be in the NFL again. He's still respected in a lot of circles. Maybe he'll go back to Green Bay where they like him.
I was just about to say I think he's going to end up back in Green Bay, but coming in, he does lose a little bit of credibility going forward because he was an offensive line coach before he was a quarterback coach. And look at the offensive line here. And I mean, last week we did see, I will point out, we did see a little bit more in terms of scheme on the defense that was interesting. I saw Ndamukong Suh at defensive end, which was pretty cool. But I think the thing that Twitter wants to see, because Twitter is an instant gratification platform, they want to see instant results. And it's funny because we're in the bye week right now, which is ultimately, I said going into this game, if Philbin wasn't fired, Twitter was just going to fester and turn it into an insufferable mess during the bye week when people have nothing to actually talk about. And it's right now, I mean, it's like you've both been saying, it's just two ridiculous extremes, one after another.
And that's the problem here. Is I hate to harp on Twitter all the time, but it's always such a good way to get topics in because you see all these reactions, and what we do is we pretty much react to these reactions, and we're looking at this fan base, and I totally get the skepticism, I do, but it makes it sound so depressing. It's like we just brought in this new guy. He's literally the anti-Philbin, whom we have been complaining about this whole time. He is strong. He is tough. He wants to bring in this attitude of winning. He has this resume. He was under Bill Parcells. He learned from him. He was under Sean Payton. He learned from him. He has all of these people that he has been taking notes from and learning. And not only learning what does work, learning what doesn't work. His press conference will tell you that by watching Joe Philbin, he has essentially learned that what he did doesn't work. So he's going to do everything he can to avoid any Philbin-like approach. And yet, nobody cares. They're over it. They want to move on. They're looking for head coaching candidates for next year.
Yeah, that to me though, that's what happens when you've been having the run like the Dolphins have. Because I saw real similar reactions out of the Buffalo fans when they lost on Sunday. And it's because Miami and Buffalo, I think, are the two longest running teams without making a playoff. Buffalo's like somewhere around 15 years or something, I
Yeah,
want to say.
Buffalo hasn't made it since like 2000.
And so when you go that far out of playoffs, I think the fans just start to just create doubt in general. It's like, well, you never win, you never make the playoffs, and so they're fighting that a little bit. You see that reaction on Twitter, and I'm not just sitting here drinking the Kool-Aid blindly on Dan Campbell. To me, he's nothing more than a lottery ticket that he's going to be a good coach. But the bottom line was is Philbin had, I mean, this is all this Tannehill stuff with practice or anything. Philbin had lost the team. I mean, that was readily apparent in the last two games. I think he lost the team last year after that Denver game. They never were the same. They never stopped the run. They struggled on offense, and they just never came back from that. And I think a lot of it was because Philbin is so dedicated to his scheme. Defenses had just figured it out enough that it was really hampering the team. So whether or not Dan Campbell is going to be this great NFL coach, who knows? But, I mean, it was a necessary change. We get 12 games to see how he does with the team, and, maybe we could get lucky. Football is hard to say because everything you're describing Dan Campbell is, to me, is the same stuff I would use to describe Tony Sperano as a player's coach, Bill Parcells guy, tough, hard-nosed guy.
I think it's important, though, to delineate between a player's coach and an energetic coach like that, because I don't think the players are all going to be crazy about what Dan Campbell does. I mean, they were already complaining about practice. We all heard that the players weren't into the Thursday practices or the Friday practices.
Well, I think that Dan Campbell is doing what he can do to try to toughen the team up, and I love that he came right out and said, in particular on the Lions, they are going to be going after each other. I expect there to be fights, and that's exactly what I wanted to hear, because that's what happens in a game. You're going to get punched in the mouth, and they want to see what you're going to do about it. And unfortunately, under Philbin, what they do about it is, we're just not going to run the ball because you just punched us in the mouth, so we won't run it anymore. We'll just pass the rest of the game. And so I think Dan Campbell is looking at that as like, hey, look, we've got to be able to run the football, and running the football is as much about personality as it is about talent. And so there's going to be some rugged practices coming, and I've already tweeted this out that I predict Dallas Thomas is going to lose his starting job because that is not what he excels at. Is Randy McMichael said, let's just do the Oklahoma drill. Ndamukong Suh will just destroy Dallas Thomas in the Oklahoma drill, and I think that's what needs to happen. He needs to just get annihilated in there, and it's becomes apparent. It's not a question of who's got the better technique, who's got the better plays down, who knows where they go the best. It's about strapping it on, going one-on-one, and seeing who can hang in there. Who's the toughest? Who's the strongest? And I think Billy Turner, that's exactly his mentality, and he'll excel at that. So there's going to be some good things he brings, but I don't know from an X's and O's standpoint if Dan Campbell is going to be ready for what's going to be coming at him. So he's still going to have to rely on his coordinators to a large extent. And so that's going to be really what we're going to really find out in the next few games is if it was Joe Philbin that was dictating to play basically vanilla football, or if it was Coyle and Laser that have been doing that, and Joe Philbin was just basically standing there lost on the sidelines, which a lot of people believe he was, but we're going to find that out.
When you have that Durr face on, Chad, it's kind of hard to believe otherwise. But let me ask you this: you brought up, let's just say for a moment that somebody out there doesn't know what the Oklahoma drill is, just because we're curious. Explain the Oklahoma drill, please.
Essentially, you take tackling dummies, you lay them side by side, and you're putting the ball in the middle, and you go head to head over and over and over. Like you just bring one lineman in after another, and it's the man who gets pushed out of there is who loses. It's a very high impact, very violent.
Richie Incognito used to own the Oklahoma drill.
Right,
I mean, it's the angriest, biggest dude win. So it's basically everyone against Ndamukong Suh, and it's
who's the badass, who's the toughest, and
right.
You just go at that, and a lot of people shy away from it because you have the potential of getting somebody hurt. But you can't. Like I said, at some point you got to be like, look, we're 1-3. We can't just worry about people getting hurt. We've got to strap on and go out there and play. And that Oklahoma drill, I don't know if they're going to be doing a lot of that, but it's that kind of mentality where it's going to be, look, run the plays. We're going to run the ball at the defense, and who's not performing up to par is who's not going to be playing. And so if Jordan Phillips is a very good defensive tackle, he's going to be going up against Mike Pouncey. He's going to be going up against Brandon Albert. They're going to be moving him around. Can he handle those guys or not? That's what we're going to find out. There's no more you're getting the starting job because you're a veteran, or I feel like the defense a little bit better, or I like your technique a little bit better. No, it's going to be who wins the matchups one-on-one in practice. That's who's playing. That's going to be the major change.
I think one thing, though, that's important is Joe Philbin put way too much stock in practice. I mean, we would watch, Lewis and I were talking about it, guys like Jelani Jenkins, who don't practice well, but they ball when they get in the game. There are guys like that who can do that. And I think that as someone who's more in touch than Joe Philbin was, I think Dan Campbell will acknowledge that. And I'm excited to see if he shakes up. I mean, I know we obviously just spent a lot of time talking about it, but is he going to put so much stock in knowing the system, or is he just going to say, hey, Devontae, go run and just see if you can beat the guy? Because that's what we need to do. What do we have to lose? Our team has nothing to lose.
That's works to our advantage, though, Max. Because
right, I know, in a good way.
Nobody wants to play the Dolphins right now. I guarantee nobody wants to play them because, one, we have a new coach. So how do you prepare? I mean, what scheme are the Dolphins going to run? How are they going to play football? And you know what? What does it hurt Dan Campbell if we do something crazy and it doesn't work out?
Exactly.
It just makes him look bad. That's all.
Does it? I mean, he's basically saying I inherited a team that's just been terrible. So he wants to run a flea flicker, or he wants to run a double reverse, or he wants to do something crazy. He's in that position right now where he's under no pressure, really. I mean, he wants to win, but it makes it a lot difficult for teams that are trying to prepare for the team because Philbin was this guy who is so organized. I think he thought that it's not about emotion, it's about execution. And so I'm going to have my team ready to execute the same plays as a high level possible. I want perfection on execution. And I think that's going to go away now to be a much more emotional type game where it's like, hey, if we're pounding the football, we're going to embarrass these guys. We're going to pound them. Or if we have a bad guard, we're going to get Ndamukong Suh on there so he can get in there and hurt the quarterback. And so it's going to be a much more physical mentality sort of football game. But whether that'll be more successful remains to be seen. But the bottom line is, what is this team? How can we go worse right now? I mean, what's the worst that can happen? We're going to lose again. 40 to...
People recognize how crazy it is in the first place, not in a bad way, but that Dan Campbell is where he is right now. I mean, he's gone in 5 seasons from intern to head coach. And I think people are going to say, like, well, let's see what he can do. But I don't think people would necessarily fault him so much if the team doesn't come out and play well because he inherited such a dumpster fire.
I think if he just excites the fan base, that's what he needs to do. And so the best way to do that is do some stuff that's fun. Take some huge shots down the field to Devontae Parker and just say, hey, just run a fly. Don't worry about what the defense it is. Just run a fly. Tannehill, if he's one-on-one, just chuck it up. Don't worry if he's covered. Just chuck it up. Let's have some fun. Let's try to bomb a touchdown to him. Let's see how far you can throw it. And that kind of stuff is what I'm hoping. And, if we're lucky, from a lottery ticket standpoint, he, with his mentality, he ends up being a coach like a Bill Cowher, where he's a real hard-nosed, physical style coach that the players respond to. Worst case scenario is he just can't handle the X's and O's part, and the players just are getting out-coached because they're being put in positions where they're not succeeding. But if that happens, then we're where we're at today. So we have nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, this is the thing though. I'm surprised. I'm surprised that we haven't seen any comparisons to Tony Sparano yet, because it sounds to me that like what Campbell wants to run is a ground and pound, hard-nosed football team like Sparano ran, and we all know nobody likes Sparano.
Well, the interesting part is we have that's what I was alluding to earlier in the show with Deion Sims. We have personnel that we can shift over to a Tony Sparano style of team. However, one thing Tony Sparano never had was the skill players to effectively handle that. I mean, he was
didn't have Ryan Tannehill.
Chad Henney, and so Dan Campbell gets to he can shift to run Jordan Cameron, Deion Sims, and run a double tight formation. He can swap Billy Turner in for Dallas Thomas, and he can. That's a legitimate, effective power run team. Mike Pouncey is no slouch. Jameel Douglas is as strong as a tank. Those guys are powerful run blockers. The Dolphins are not power running the football whatsoever. It's all based on passing and misdirection out of the shotgun for the running game. So he has the ability to do that, but he has Devontae Parker, he has Ryan Tannehill, he has Jarvis Landry, he has Kenny Stills. He has a whole host of skill players that he can utilize if that power formation is working. I mean, what a novel idea to actually pound the football and use the play action. I have just been sick to my stomach watching Miami run play action plays when the defense is not even considering playing the run, and they just go barreling in there and just smear Tannehill, who's being delayed by faking a handoff. I mean, you guys, you've had to see that, right? How bad their play action game has been.
Oh, God. Well, I mean, it's not even that the play action game is bad. It's also that they just don't establish anything. So, like, Tannehill's just getting killed because they know exactly what we're going to do every single play. I mean, it's the definition of insanity. It's doing the same thing multiple times and expecting different results. They go out there and the same thing happens. It looks like when an SEC team plays one of their cupcake games to start the season. There's no victory in the trenches. Like, yeah, they'll get lucky with a deep pass every once in a while, and they'll make a play with one of the skill players, but they're not winning where it matters. You win games in the trenches. You win games on the offensive line and the defensive line, establishing pressure. Miami is losing both of those battles in ridiculous fashion right now.
Yeah, so hopefully Dan Campbell will be able to change that. But
that's one thing. He's a trenches kind of guy. I mean, you look at him.
I will say personally, I would have had a really hard time because, I mean, I watched about the second half of the Jets games, and normally I would have been right up to watch it, but I already knew going into the game, it's just like I didn't really know if I even wanted the team to win because I just didn't see them going anywhere at this point with Philbin at coach. He kind of lost control of the team, and so kind of my worst case scenario is what if we eke one out and beat the Jets and Titans and get to 3-2, and then we just go into that tough stretch and get stomped, and that's the end of the season. So I feel like this is like it was a necessary evil to maybe breathe life back into the team. And so it feels like we still have a chance now. 1-3 is obviously not great, but that's a long ways from being eliminated, from a playoff run. And, the Titans are a very beatable football team. They are by no stretch a powerhouse football team. They still have a rookie quarterback. We can get in there. We can beat Tennessee, and all of a sudden you're at 2-3, and you know what? Suddenly there's hope that's back again. So at the very least, Dan Campbell has brought hope back to the team, whether he deserves it or not.
Yeah, and you know what, guys? At this point, it has to be a matter of we're either gonna wait and see what happens, or you can just stop watching the games. And how many of us here are actually gonna stop watching?
None. I woke up at 6:30 in the morning to watch that Jets game.
And so there you go, man.
None of us are. We always. I mean, I'm interested to see what the home atmosphere would be like after a win in Tennessee.
So let's assume we win under Dan Campbell. Do people suddenly start getting happy again, or are we still going to
I think they'll maintain attendance at that next game if Dan Campbell gets a win in Tennessee because of the big change. So, I mean, that was another reason Ross had to make this change, because Ross did not do the team any favors with how they did the schedule with the stadium. They shifted all the home games, basically, the majority, I should say, of the home games to the back end of the schedule. And I talk about having to feel sick to your stomach. Here Ross is spending a couple $100 million getting the stadium upgraded, and they start off so sickeningly bad that, what is the outlook for this team at the end of the season?
They're starting out so sickeningly bad that they're even getting mad that they put in like these cushy whatever seats for the richer individuals. Like those are how many seats are those that are gone now? Like really, like 1,000 seats?
It doesn't matter if it's a lazy boy recliner or a fold-up chair right now. If the team's bad, it's going to be empty either way.
But that's my point. It's like they're literally looking for every possible thing to be mad at. Like, let's be mad that the team's colors are aqua and orange while we're at it. I mean, you got to stop somewhere.
People in general are, but I mean, for Ross, he has to do something. I mean, even if we're an outside shot, he's got to want to be at least trying to have a chance to make the playoffs when we get into the last 4 games of the season or so, because who's going to go to that game if the Dolphins are already eliminated, in particular if Joe Philbin's still the coach?
How much of a letdown is that Monday night game going to be, that big game with the throwback jerseys and the everything? How much of a letdown is that game going to be if we're, in week 14, if we're have some awful record and go in there and we come out in what was supposed to be a huge game at home with the celebration of the 50th anniversary team, and we're awful.
That's why the change had to be made. So, I mean, the hope, obviously, is that Dan Campbell can get it turned around and we can get some wins. Because obviously we cannot afford to lose anymore if we have any realistic shot of getting back in the chase. You can't go 1-4 or 1-5. I mean, you go there and it's over. So
the Bills did us a huge favor by losing on Sunday to the Giants. That's the only thing that kept hope alive.
Yeah, to me, it's you got to just pay attention to what's going on in the league. The Ravens have struggled. Pittsburgh has their issues with Roethlisberger out. The Bills have now lost again, and so the Dolphins are not by no means out of a chance to chase the wild card. I don't think the way the Patriots are playing right now, it's going to be realistic for Miami to really chase the division unless Brady gets hurt or something. But the point is you just right now, I don't think the fans out there are expecting Miami to just come out and start dominating. They just want to see us get back into it.
That last stretch of the schedule, when we looked at the beginning of the season, we thought, and everyone thought, oh, wow, that looks like some really tough games. A lot of these teams have ended up coming out flat. We're going to be playing against the Eagles, who haven't looked anywhere near what people thought they would. The Cowboys won't have Romo back. Maybe won't even have Des Bryant back. The Ravens haven't been what anyone thought they would be. And the Colts haven't been what anyone thought they would be.
Exactly. I mean, they're winnable football games. You just have to get to that stretch
to have a chance. The scariest games are at that stretch is just going to kill us. At New England on Thursday Night Football, then the next week at Buffalo. 2 straight road divisional games.
Right.
Against the 2 hardest teams on the rest of our schedule.
Yeah, that's why I said Ross didn't do us any favors, and then plus he gave away the home game to the Jets, obviously, which ended up backfiring for a loss as well. But
I'm glad we were not in Sun Life Stadium for that game, because that would have been toxic fast. I mean, that would have been ridiculous, even worse than it already was.
Yeah, I'm thinking the team probably was better that they didn't do that in Miami, but I think that the bottom line is that they just want to try to keep it so we have a chance. And so I think if Dan Campbell, this is what my philosophy has been, if he can get this team to 9-7, I think he's got this job. I think he stays head coach. I don't know that they'll even do much research. If he's 8-8 or 7-9, I think Dan Campbell will be in consideration for the head coach, but they're going to be shopping around. If he's worse than that, then I think Dan Campbell will probably move on and no longer be, coach in Miami, and they'll probably remake everything. I wouldn't be surprised to see Tannenbaum stay, but Tannenbaum will not be safe if Dan Campbell can't get this team back to the 500 range, because you may get a high-powered coach out there. If you can get Peyton or Josh McNown or something, those guys may want their own GM, or they may even want GM capabilities. And I don't think Ross can afford to not get a high-end coaching prospect just to keep Tannenbaum. So,
what do you think if we go 9-7? I think in the AFC, the way it looks this year, just because of how the Ravens look and how the Steelers look, I think 9-7 might actually get it done.
It might. But I mean,
what do you think if it's 9-7? I'm interested to hear everyone's opinion on this, because I have genuinely no clue. If we're 9-7 and don't make the playoffs, what do you think happens?
I think he keeps his job.
That would mean that he went 8-3 I'm sorry, 8-4 the rest of the way. So that's more than half. That's more than double the amount of losses to wins for Campbell. Campbell was not the one who coached them to 1-3. I would hope that the Dolphins would see, if they go 9-7, they would see that for Campbell that's actually 8-4.
We're 0
Yeah,
0. We're 0 0 right now for Dan Campbell.
right. So that's my point. Is at 9-7, he clearly turned the team around in my mind.
Right. I agree, and
Yeah.
I think it matters a lot. Also, looking at which games he wins and loses. I mean, if he does what the Dolphins have historically done, he needs to win the games that we don't usually win. When Baltimore comes into Miami, we've been awful
That's
against
interesting.
Baltimore.
That's actually interesting, Max. I'm glad you brought that up. The Ravens have always been this punch-you-in-the-mouth team. What happens under Dan Campbell when they're a punch-you-back?
Right,
Well,
exactly.
that was to be my response in general. This should win and shouldn't win is right now. It's not going to be about. It shouldn't be about that. It should be about we're going to go out and we're going to wreck some people, win or lose. And so when we play the Patriots, if I'm Dan Campbell, the Patriots better be scared to death because I don't care if we lose, but you can be damn sure I'm going to try to get a shot on Brady with Ndamukong Suh. You guys better be ready for that. And that starts to get in their heads because they're starting to think, maybe we just want to get out of here with a win. Maybe we should be a little more conservative because these guys are just going to come after us, not really caring that much if they win or lose. They're coming to wreck it.
They're going to look across. Other teams are going to look across that sideline, and they're going to see Dan Campbell standing there like just stone-faced yelling at this team. And I think the team will obviously have energy. And I'm interested to see, I think everyone needs to just look at whatever Jim Schwartz was doing to motivate Ndamukong Suh to play well, because I think right now he's just coasting. And when you look at these teams, you're exactly right, Chad, that they're going to try to punch other teams in the mouth. And you look at the teams, the Bills at Buffalo, they're going to want that game so badly. They're going to want to win.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't expect the Miami Dolphins to go defeat the New England Patriots in New England.
I don't expect them to beat the Patriots at all, really. I don't expect. I'm having a hard time expecting them to lose anywhere.
But I expect it to be extremely physical and extremely brutal game for the Patriots. That's what I'm expecting. And so I'm hoping that Dan Campbell is going to walk the walk as he's talking the talk and play tight press coverage and blitz Brady continuously. Just try to hit him over and over. And if they run the coil, let's just sit back, try to prevent mistakes. Brady, how many years have we seen that and Brady just picks it apart? And so that's the mentality is we're hoping that it gets, because Joe Philbin is the absolute opposite end of the spectrum of vanilla. He wants to play smart, not make mistakes, and to the point where he wouldn't turn people loose and let them really go out there and be a little bit crazy. That you need to play on edge. And that's what Dan Campbell was talking about. Is you've got to be playing with that edge that you're teetering on losing control. Now, obviously, you've got to be able to restrain that. You can't be doing the Olivier Vernon punch somebody at the critical juncture in the game.
God, that drove me nuts.
But that doesn't mean that I would expect Mike Pouncey to get into a fight in a game early on in the game when it's contested, and you want to get there and you want to set the mentality that we're here to play 60 minutes of brutal football. You may beat us, but you are going to be sitting in that locker room.
They're going to be sore on Monday morning.
Exactly.
Games against our team. And when you look, it almost flips our schedule upside down. It's like we can win the punch-you-in-the-mouth games, hopefully, but it's the finesse games that might become a problem now because who knows what's going to happen. I mean,
hopefully they'll balance it because I would like to see them come out pounding the football and then suddenly just jump back into the standard offense that they've been learned. Jump into 3 wide receiver set, start running those quick passes.
Yep.
Keep the defense off balance, keep them on their toes, and be unpredictable. And that's to me that's the way you win football games is executing unpredictable stuff.
And I think one thing that Campbell does have going for him that I meant to mention earlier is a tight end does so many jobs on the field that Campbell actually has a decent amount of. It's not, he's not just it's not like just running backs. These tight ends, they catch the ball, they block, They go downfield. They're doing everything. That's what the tight end's job is. I think Campbell could instill that, like you were saying, Chad, that Swiss Army knife nature in our offense and just say, who cares what your role is? Just go out and make a play. Like, who cares? Like, if you're, Kenny Stills, who cares if you're a defense? If you want to make a play on a short route, go do it. He's going to put his players in position to make their own plays. Philbin used to have systems that would put players in a position where the play was there. Dan Campbell is going to allow the players to create.
Do you guys think, well, hang on, guys, because that's interesting. Do you think that this might get to a point where it might get too out of control? Because I don't want to make it. I look at it like this. We've been saying all this time that Campbell's going to give the players freedom to do their thing. And I also mentioned how Campbell was the anti-Philbin. However, just like with anything, there's more than one extreme. Philbin was too controlling. Do you have perhaps a legitimate concern that Campbell might give too much freedom? I don't mean in the sense that the inmates are going to run the asylum, more like along the lines of on the field, there's not going to be much cohesion.
I think the difference is, we watched, I don't know how much you guys all remember from Hard Knocks a couple of years ago, what Dan Campbell is willing to do to his players when they do not do what he says. He physically was shoving his players repeatedly.
Yeah, but it was Michael Agnew. Come on, who can't shove around Michael Agnew?
Fair.
I can shove around Michael Agnew.
Fair.
No, but it's going to get. I just thought Joe Philbin, he was so caught up in his scheme, the plays they were going to run. He never did really have an emotional feel on the team, and Dan Campbell, I don't think he is going to accept failure. If you're an offensive lineman or defense lineman in particular and you're getting beat, I think you are going to get just berated by Dan Campbell.
It's going to be the quote, effing go out and block somebody. Just like he said to his group on that show, go out and block somebody. And honestly, I think you were spot on when you said that Dallas Thomas could lose his job. Because
he just doesn't seem like a tough guy to me.
Right. Billy Turner seems like a tough guy. Billy Turner seems like the kind of guy who you could say, go out and block somebody. And Billy Turner's just going to say, okay, and go punch someone in the mouth.
Shh, we're not allowed to support Billy Turner anymore. We're Twitter GMs.
Oh, right.
Hey, it depends on the scheme. I would not advocate saying, well, Billy Turner should be starting over Dallas Thomas.
No.
You're going to throw the ball 75% of the time out of the shotgun. Because Billy Turner isn't a great pass blocker, and he does have some flaws, in his technique. But if you're going to just line up and say, I want you to go man-to-man with the guy in front of you, and I want you to try to physically beat him, Billy Turner by far is a far superior guy to do that mentality than Dallas Thomas in my mind. So we'll see. We'll see who wins the Oklahoma drill maybe this week. So
I think that would be absolutely awesome if he gets out there and he says first things first, line up, let's go at it. He says, Ndamukong Suh, I don't care if you're making $100 million, you're running at this guy, and I think that's what they need. Because Dan Campbell does not strike me as the type of guy who would treat players differently. He doesn't strike me as that type of coach. He strikes me as the guy who, if Ndamukong Suh is coasting through practice, he's going to say, hey, number 93, get it together.
Yeah.
Isn't that what Tom Landry used to do with the old style Cowboys?
That was what it was actually and then funny, the old stories about Jimmy Johnson, who used to just not even care how his starters practiced. And it's so funny because you really see a perfect time to chime in with this. There's so many different styles of coaches. There's so many different ways that they can succeed that we can take a step back and like we've been saying that people are unable to do right now, take a step back and see what's going to happen because no two coaches have ever done it the same way.
Yep, I agree. It's exciting for I'm excited for Dan Campbell because, again, this is not a typical 1-3 team. And like when Bill Science's making comments like it just never works. Well, usually when you're at this point,
you usually just don't have a franchise quarterback and one of the best defensive tackles in the league on a 1-3 team.
And a very
Max,
capable wide
Remember,
receiver.
we don't. Ryan Tannehill.
Very capable. And Brandon Alberts will probably be back. I think Brandon Albert's going to be much improved because he's finally had the time, I think, to get his body together a little bit more now. So he'll be back at left tackle. Again, we've got a very, I think, talented two tight ends. That Deion Sims and Jordan Cameron are very good tight ends. And so he has a lot to work with. So it's exciting to me to see. We're finally going to go out there, and when we turn the TV on Sunday, or you're at the game on Sunday, you have no idea what's coming. And to me, that's exciting and that's fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
And back, Lewis, what you were just saying about people at Tannehill, I actually had someone in Facebook comments the other day on one of our articles tell me that they should start Josh Freeman against the Jets, not realizing that he was not on the team. Yep.
What?
Someone actually said we should start Josh Freeman, and then followed it up with Brad Kaya is better than Ryan Tannehill. I could not make this up if I tried.
Okay, Brad Kaya might be better
But
someday.
he's a college quarterback.
Someday.
Right, they were talking
But not
about
today.
what Miami needs to do now.
No, the Josh Freeman really got me. It's like, do you realize Josh Freeman isn't even in the Canadian Football League?
They said you don't know what you're talking about. They should start Josh Freeman, and I'm just like, Jesus. But yeah, it's going to be exciting to see what we get out there, and I want to see, like you were talking about, Lewis, what they let Tannehill do. Now that whether Laser was or wasn't handcuffing that offense, whether Philbin was or wasn't handcuffing the offense, I have absolutely no idea. But what's going to be interesting to find out, we're going to find out, is what I mean. We're going to find out on next Sunday against the Titans how much he was or wasn't, because we're going to see Ryan Tannehill up there making calls. I mean, we saw online that there were moments that people said on Twitter he had versions of a play but could not change the play. I believe it was an exchange between Simon Clancy and Ian Wharton, who they said Tannehill has four versions of every play when he gets to the line. Let's see if he can actually change a play. I mean, this time. Let's see if Dan Campbell says, "I'm your boss, Coach Laser. You're going to do this."
Well, we'll see, guys. A Sunday from this Sunday, 2 weeks from now, we'll be able to watch the Dolphins go up against the Titans. However, this Sunday, I am going to enjoy sleeping in because I am exhausted and it has been a long night, guys. We've actually had a really good show. We actually ran a little long. We had Randy McMichael on. He had some awesome things. He had some awesome things to say. I'm really glad that we had him on. I love it when people come on and they're honest with us. I feel like that sometimes players get so caught up in the PR of it that I understand why. Believe me, I do. I understand that they have to be very careful about what they say. Otherwise, something is going to happen and something's going to go horribly wrong, and they're going to get in trouble with their team. Oh, believe me, I understand that. But at some point, it gets to where you're so worried about possibly getting into trouble. And I understand it, but come on, talk a little bit. You can vent your frustration.
That's what Dan Campbell did. Dan Campbell talked. He got up there and he sounded like that was one of the most candid moments that I've seen from a coach.
And you want to know the best part, Max? You want to know the best part? The best part was
it wasn't even candid. He couldn't say what he wanted.
But you could tell he managed to say the conference in such a way, and this encourages me because that means he's a smart man and he realizes that he knows what he needs to say and what he needs to not say at certain times. He managed to get the message across. We are not a Joe Philbin football team without actually mentioning his name and throwing him under the bus. I love this. I think it was Omar who asked this question in the press conference. Are you saying that this team was not well led, or are you saying this team was not tough enough before? Oh, no, I remember the question. Are you saying this team wasn't motivated before? And he said that I think there are other ways to motivate players, and I'm going to look into how to do that. He did not say, no, I don't think they were motivated. He said, I think there's more than one way. So
awesome.
he
It
didn't
was
say
awesome. It
no,
was
the
like
players were not motivated.
it was like that "I'm not touching you" moment where you're like, is he gonna do it? Is he gonna do it? And he towed the line so perfectly, and it was one of those read between the lines type moments where you understood exactly what he wanted to say but couldn't say, and if he had said it, it would have been bad. But we all saw the same things that he couldn't say but was able to convey. And I think like you said, it's a good time to have the bye week because I think we all need a break from this. But
I
this
just need
team
some
is going to be
sleep. I don't care.
exciting. Yeah, this team is going to be exciting whether we win or lose with Dan Campbell at the helm.
Yeah, and just before we wrap this up, we're gonna briefly discuss the whole issue with Ryan Tannehill and apparently yelling at the practice squad players because it's a topic. It's a dumb topic, but
You're a
it's a
man of the
topic
people,
nonetheless.
Lewis. You're a man of the people.
I'm a man of the people. Yes, I am. Why am I a man of the people? Anyway. Anyway, so apparently the reports were, and there's rumors that it was actually Miko who was the
Yep.
source. So wop wop. Okay, so supposedly Tannehill got upset at some practice squad people, and Barry Jackson actually named Chris McCain and I don't know this other guy's name, Jonathan Dowling, as the people that apparently led to Tannehill getting angry and yelling stuff like, enjoy your practice squad trophy and practice squad paycheck and blah, 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 blah. And Jeff Darlington came out in full force and essentially said, that's a lie. And Simon Clancy essentially said, that's a lie. And then you have other people saying, that's not a lie, it's the truth. And, okay, let me just say this for the record. Regardless of whether it's the truth or not, if it really is the truth, are we upset about it? We've been begging for Tannehill to get out of this whole robotic quarterback stage, and now the one time he actually does it and he gets upset with somebody, we're upset with him for getting upset with somebody. So, like, oh my gosh, what do you want from him? You want him to just disappear?
I mean, honestly, excuse my language.
We're a clean show around here.
Most NFL quarterbacks aren't the nicest of dudes. I mean, there's a fire there. There's intensity, and that's what we want. Just like you said, Lewis, we wanted to see it, and I personally don't subscribe to the fact that it was true. I think it's completely uncharacteristic of what we've heard of him. I don't dispute that he said the other things that he said with the trophy case comments or whatever else was being said. The only thing that I've really thought about were the practice squad paycheck comments. I don't think it was true just because I trust people who are willing to put their name on it and say it didn't happen more than people who aren't willing to put their name on it to say it did. And even if it is true, it doesn't bother me that much. I think it's the kind of thing, someone said this on Twitter, it was one of the analysts who said this kind of stuff doesn't get out if a team's winning. And it's true.
I think I can sum that up pretty simple. And it's you got changed. I mean, it did anything but explain why Joe Philbin had to go. He had lost control of the team, but the players knew change was coming. I mean, nobody's stupid. After they lost to the Jets, it was pretty obvious there was going to be changes. And so it doesn't shock me at all that you have players like Chris McCain who basically went from.
But this was before the Jets game.
Well, even before then, these guys are trying to. They're in a situation where they are practice squad or third string players, and they're trying to get noticed. And so that's why they're doing those sort of things. We used to, in football, we had guys we would call Friday Night Heroes because they would be like going all out when you're trying to do a walkthrough before the game. And it was just like those are the guys that are trying to get noticed. I think it's a very, very minor thing, and I would probably said exactly the same thing Tannehill would said if the coaches told those guys, hey, go easy, we're trying to get our timing on offense, and they're going all out, trying to look like superstars, I would call them, enjoy your practice squad trophy too. I would have said just what Tannehill would have said. So I would be a lot more concerned if, like, Tannehill had gotten into an altercation with Ndamukong Suh or Cameron Wake in the locker room or Jarvis Landry in the locker room where it's your leaders fighting. Tannehill putting practice squad people in check it's just so minor. That's about all I can say. It's really being blown out of proportion.
That's what happens in Miami, though, doesn't it? That's just how it works
All
around here.
across the league. All across the league.
Yeah, but yeah, I know. We always say it's just Miami, but I understand it's everywhere. It's just it's just worse.
We're looking at it. We're looking
We
at
cover the Dolphins, so it's most vocal there.
Yep.
So, well, we pretty much covered that whole mess. So we're done with that. Ryan Tannehill is a franchise quarterback. Move on. So, with that said, thank you guys for listening. I want to thank again Randy McMichael for joining us on the show. You can follow him at RandyMac81. That is RandyMac81. You can follow my co-host Chad Ronnebaum at GoFins4SB. That's GoFins, the number 4SB. And of course, you have Kathy D'Amato, and her Twitter handle is at Catherine. How many E's are on the end of that? Catherine. Hello. Okay, she's gone. Okay, well, I'll put it in the description or something. And of course, Max Himmelreck at the Deep End Miami. And I want to thank you for joining us too. I hope you had a good time with us because I had a good time talking to you guys.
Of course, always. Love being on.
All right, so with that said, I want to thank everybody for joining us. The podcast will be up on SoundCloud by tomorrow morning at the very latest, and of course you can always jump onto YouTube and watch it here. So with that said, I am Louis Song, my co-host Chad Ronnebaum, and for Kathy D'Amato, Max Himmelreck, and of course former Dolphins tight end Randy McMichael, I want to say good night and have some. Hopefully we'll have some reason to say fins up in a couple of weeks.